The Virtual CMO podcast is sponsored by the Strategic Marketing Advisory Services of the 5 Echelon Group. If you'd like to work directly with the 5 Echelon Group and discuss how fractional CMO services can help optimize your business, enhance marketing effectiveness, and grow revenue, visit 5echelon.com. That's FIVEECHELON.com to learn more and schedule a free consultation. Welcome to the Virtual CMO podcast. I'm Eric Dickman, your host, and today we're talking about something that sits at the center of modern marketing leadership: how CMOs align marketing to revenue and become more strategic voices inside their organizations. Joining me today is Dana Marxer. Dana has led marketing and product teams across a range of high-growth B2B companies and brings a unique perspective as both an engineer and a marketing leader. As CEO of IQ, she brings a unique mix of skills as an innovative strategic leader with the analytical approach and tactical execution of an engineer. Today, she's focused on helping organizations build more data-driven paths to revenue. And I'm excited for our conversation. Dana, great to have you on the show today. The timing of this conversation is really perfect. I was reading an article this week. It was in Adweek, and it was entitled "Revenue Over Brand Awareness, Economic Worries and AI Have Shifted Priorities for the Marketing Department." And I thought, boy, that's a timely article given what we're going to be talking about today. And I'd love just to get your perspective on this. How have you seen the role of the CMO kind of evolve over the past 5-10 years?
Sure. Well, first, thanks so much for having me as one of my favorite topics. So how it has evolved, it's interesting because depending on the size of the organization in B2B, we're talking about B2B.
For sure.
Very different marketing function there. And, I always, you know me, Eric, I'm an engineer by background, and then I got into B2B marketing. Very circuitous path. We won't talk about that today. But I loved marketing because that's where all the strategy sat. Right? That's right. All the strategy sat. And, I think, back a couple decades ago, it was more common to see organizations look at marketing as brand, like you said, collateral, design. But even back then, it was how are we going to go to market and make money? Right. Mm-hmm. It was also included, especially in B2B technology companies, which has been my focus. It was how do we package these products in a way that the market wants to buy them, wants to consume them? What is the value that they're getting from the products? And so that kind of positioning and marketing messaging was always highly strategic. So I always loved that. But I think over the last decade or so, that has been the more common view of marketing. And, in smaller organizations, you're always going to start with the sales leader, right? You got to sell to get to that critical mass to then bring on your marketing person.
Absolutely.
Once that marketing person hits the organization, that's the pivot, right? That's the pivot where you can start to grow at scale. Because I always look at marketing as, if you're going to invest in marketing so you can grow faster and more economically than you can just by adding more salespeople.
So where do you see the biggest disconnect right now from where marketing is kind of operating and where leadership would like them to be operating from?
When we look at that strategy, when we look at that messaging, when we look at that positioning, it does take a creative mind, right? It takes that creativity. But marketing is also an engine, right? It is a repeatable process that can be optimized. And so when I look at the marketing gurus that I know, and we kind of, rub elbows with, they're both the creative and the process-driven thinkers, right? It's how are we going to optimize our marketing tactics for the benefit of the organization. And that's when it's really important. Well, what is the benefit of the organization? Right. So it's, if you ask all of the other executives in the leadership team, followers on LinkedIn is not going to be at the top of the list or, of benefit to the organization. Now, we as marketers, this is the double-edged sword. We as marketers know how critical that is.
Yes.
Know how critical the branding efforts are. Way back funny story, Eric, way back 2 decades ago, when I first took over this global B2B marketing organization, I started running analytics. And I said, and I used, I'm going to geek out for a second, the proxy variable to look at our branding activity, like when our branding activity is higher or lower.
Okay.
And use some regression analysis. And I came to the conclusion from a data-based analysis that, hey, when our branding activity is higher, our lead conversion is higher. And then I go to my creative director and I said, Steve, look, when we do more branding, our conversion rates are better. And he said, Dana, we all know that. Right? We as marketers know that intuitively. But the rest of our executive team will look at the analysis and then believe it. Right?
Yes.
They don't believe it from instinct. They believe it from the data.
Well, and I think that's a great segue into the next point that I really wanted to drill into, which is kind of the language that we're speaking when we're talking in the organization. Because just as you said, marketing often speaks in these activity metrics, right? Well, the rest of the team, whether it's the C-suite or whether it's the folks over on the sales side, they're focused on revenue. I talk about a lot when I'm dealing with clients in these random acts of marketing where teams are so busy doing activities that they're not really looking at how those activities are really turning into outcomes that lead to revenue. So when you think about marketing teams and the CMOs, how do they need to rethink the way they're communicating to the CEO, to the CFO, to the CROs? What's missing in the communications right now?
So most importantly, and there's kind of the language we use within the marketing team that's really important, that is activity-based. So I don't want to dismiss those indicators as really important. But when we enter the leadership team, when we enter that boardroom, we need to be talking about revenue, bookings, efficiency, right? Spending efficiency, conversion efficiency. Those are the things, and predictability, right? When we talk at the executive level, we need to talk about how marketing is contributing to all of those things, how marketing is contributing to overall bookings, the contribution to the pipeline, the contribution to bookings. And that right there is the most important first step. Secondarily, marketing knows that they impact sales velocity, right? They know intuitively that when opportunities are marketing sourced, and we see this in our analytics all the time, when opportunities are marketing sourced, they have higher win rates, higher deal sizes, and shorter cycle times. And so now that's a secondary impact, right? First, we're going to look at contribution to bookings. How is marketing filling that pipeline so that sales can close deals so that we can grow? Then there is the efficiency, right? How are we impacting the sales productivity, right? Sales productivity is so key, and marketing has a huge impact on that. Then marketing, I see this evolve. It has evolved a lot in the market, but I also see it evolve in the maturity of an organization. But marketing impacts not only how we build pipeline, but how we close pipeline, how we improve upsell, cross-sell, right? That's a totally different marketing strategy, is into the current customer base. How we impact renewals, right? It's the entire revenue cycle that marketing needs to, when you're looking at a full marketing plan, we need to think about that whole piece, but it's always revenue and growth and efficiency.
So thinking about some of those metrics that you just mentioned, what's the right balance between leading indicators and lagging indicators, because you talked about some of the things around brand awareness that you said when you invest money in brand awareness, you can definitely see an increase in deal closures. But how do you balance that out?
There are things that we're going to focus on from in a marketing department that when we try to explain that to the rest of the executive team, it's going to fall on deaf ears. I guarantee you.
I know that feeling.
I guarantee you, right?
Yeah.
If we start to go in like you and I, as I come from the marketing side. We know how important each of those pieces are, but the outcome that's interesting is how am I taking the budget that you have entrusted to marketing and giving you the maximum bookings out? So within the marketing department, we're going to say, well, we know there's a portfolio, that we know there's a mix. And so, again, those activity metrics are all about how we optimize our marketing budgets and resources. But when we are talking to the executive level, honestly, don't care.
Yeah.
Right? It is, what is our contribution to pipeline and bookings? And how am I getting more from the marketing budget that I'm giving you? And that is where that optimization piece comes in. And all those activity things matter when we're doing that within the marketing organization. But again, we're talking about what our executive peers care about.
Well, I think this gets into a really interesting conversation too about attribution, because if you're selling a certain kind of a product, right, you run an ad, somebody clicks on the ad, they go to the website, they click the buy now button, that attribution link is pretty easy to establish.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're in B2B, you're selling high dollar products that have, months long sales cycles, lots of different people influencing the outcome of that sale, looking at the wide range of things you might be doing in marketing, sometimes it's very hard to attribute what made the difference in this particular sale, because chances are it's a lot of things made a difference in getting that sale over the finish line. So how do you think about attribution in B2B? Because I think it's very different sometimes than when you're thinking about attribution in the B2C world.
I completely agree. And so we've been talking about how marketing executives should talk to their executive peers. And I will tell you, getting to a position where you can is very, very difficult.
Yeah.
Your point, being able to do that, to say, what's our contribution? What's our impact on sales velocity? There is a known chasm between the systems that are running marketing and the systems that are running sales, right? And so, you even look at your, some of the RevOps platforms out there that are, and if you want to do marketing attribution, you do that in a different system. Like, you can't do it in a different system, because the important thing about attribution is how much money came out of that campaign.
Yes.
Right. I mean, that is why it is so difficult to be able to speak this way, because our systems, our historic systems, have naturally prevented us from seeing what we need to see to be talk about it that way. And you're absolutely right. Even within a marketing automation system, the attribution is like, I don't believe it. I don't believe that attribution, right? Some of the common won't name names, but, it's like, yeah, our ABM system said that we created all of these opportunities from these ad clicks. How can I validate that? Well,
Right.
You can't, because it's a black box. You're either going to trust them, or you're going to have the system that validates that, right? And of course, you're speaking our IQ world. We do that all the time. That's what we solve. But it is very difficult, and the interconnection of different campaigns and the attribution models like last touch, first touch, linear attribution, total influence attribution. The really important thing is you have to present this in a way that a marketing person can understand intuitively, versus getting into all the analytics details, because they're complex. They're very complex. And so, when you are able to ask your system what channels produce the most closed bookings, that it's impossible. It is impossible. It has been impossible in the past until you have this common data model that connects all the marketing activity to the sales pipeline.
Yeah.
Right. That's the chasm is, you're gonna say, well, I'm going to A/B test and I'm going to look at what that's activity based. How can I get more opens and clicks on an email? That's all important.
Yeah.
But you must connect the marketing activity and the attribution of your tactics to the generation of opportunities. And so, I've talked about one of the chasms between the marketing automation system and the sales system. Even in the sales system, okay, I'm going to name a name. Salesforce, right?
Right.
All know Salesforce. And still it's that, oh, well, I'm going to attribute it to the primary contact on my opportunity. And I know, anybody out there that has touched Salesforce and understands this marketing stuff knows that is such a incomplete and often inaccurate way to tie marketing to the opportunity. Why? Because that primary contact changes.
That's right.
It changes, right? And the sales guy is going to say, well, the MQL that came through and created that opportunity, that's not who I'm talking to in the account.
Right.
I outsourced this. And so having an engine that uses the business logic and doesn't, and I will say it's a time-based business logic, right? And with time-based business logic, I have somebody, they came in, they MQL'd, they went to the BDR, they SQL'd, an opportunity was generated within 60 days. That's an attribution. And it's going to be right 98% of the time. And so it's that logic built on a unified data model that is very, and a lot of companies try and do it.
Yeah.
And it takes a ton of expertise to be able to understand how all those things need to link together.
Yeah, because it sounds like what you're saying is this isn't just a systems problem. This isn't just a data problem. It isn't just an organizational problem. In many ways, it's a legacy of all of that against modern expectations of what management really wants to get out of these things, but with no clear process or tools to get the information that they need, that they feel they want today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's historic. It is perpetuated by organizations that continue to be siloed, right? The communication between marketing and sales, we always say that it's the marketing and sales alignment that is the nirvana. And yet we don't align. And and I think it's kind of a catch-22, right? We don't align because we don't know how.
Well, that actually leads me to my next question that I was going to ask. So if somebody's hearing this and saying, this all makes sense to me, but they don't exactly know where to start, I guess my question would be, what's your advice? Where would they start? And where do you get the requests coming in? Is it coming in from marketing leadership, or is it coming in from other executive leadership that says, we need you to come help us solve this problem? Who's making the request?
It comes from primarily 3 different roles. It will come from the marketing person when they recognize they're being asked for certain metrics that they can't produce. Right? And then it's like, I don't know how to produce that. Let's see, we went to 5 trade shows last year. What did we get from each of those? I have no idea, right? And so that's one area when it comes from the marketing team, because they're being asked for something. And or you have a very seasoned CMO that knows I need this, complete analytic system involved. Come in and do it. The CRO or the sales leadership role will come in and ask for it. And I'm gonna focus kind of on the marketing side is I don't know what marketing's giving me. Right. They're telling me that I've got all these leads, but I don't see my pipeline on the back end growing as much as the top of funnel.
Yep, hear that all the time.
Where is the disconnect?
Mm-hmm.
Right now, the other piece of the sales side is all around the predictability. Right? Is I have to hit my number. I have to create that confidence in the board that when I sign up for a target, I'm going to deliver on the target. I can't miss, right? This happens especially in PE-backed high growth B2B companies, right? They want to know that they are going to hit their number. And whether they're going to hit their number doesn't start at stage one opportunity. It starts way back in the top of funnel where am I getting this fed into my pipeline with enough volume and velocity and support that I'm going to hit my number in Q4. Right. And so that's the design of the whole. And that's our big mantra, as you know, from IQ is it's the design coming from an engineer. It's the design of your growth engine. Right. And so another role that we typically interact with is the CEO and CFO.
Yeah, makes sense.
And so especially if the CEO has a technical or engineering background, because I hear this all the time. It's like, this is the engineer's approach to the growth function. I'm like, absolutely it is. Right. I mean, think of a manufacturing line. We're manufacturing closed bookings. Right. And we have some raw materials. We have some input. We have a process. We're going to control that process so that we know if we get out of our design limit, we're in trouble. And we can tell you you're in trouble way early enough to change the outcome in the future. And so when we look at what resources are we going to need, how much do we need to spend in marketing? How many sales reps do we need? How many BDRs do we need? We see a lot of that type of, those types of questions coming from the CFO and CEO role, especially that FP&A and that, hey, I'm going to give this plan to the board. How do I know that we're going to hit it?
Well, that's interesting too, because when businesses have a problem, they don't always know what solution to ask for to fix that problem. So when you deal with prospects for a RevOps solution, do they come to you and say, Dana, we're looking for a RevOps solution for this problem? Or do they say, I've got this problem. I don't have visibility. I need this fixed. Do you offer something that fixes it? So do they come with the pain point, knowing that they have a problem, but not knowing what it is, they'll fix it?
Yeah. So the RevOps question is a really interesting one. The market understanding of RevOps is evolving, and it's evolved a lot faster over the last 24 months.
Okay.
Right. So it used to be RevOps, that's sales ops and marketing ops. It really, when we think about RevOps, and I think where the market understanding of RevOps is going is, no, RevOps is all around the generation of revenue for the function, right? It's go-to-market operations. And so it really depends on the understanding of what that term RevOps really means. Very rarely, to your point, do we have somebody come to us and say, can you fix my RevOps?
Right.
You know, they'll come to us with the problem. We don't have predictability. We can't get visibility into our marketing contribution. We don't know how to properly staff our sales and BDR team. What should my targets be? How many MQLs do I need every month? Those are the things that are the problems. The solution is, an end-to-end RevOps machine. And so to your point, and that's the funny thing is, we get into so many organizations that are trying, to say, okay, well, we're starting to define our process. And I'm saying, every process is different, but every process is the same, right? Every process is the same. And if you find yourself in a position where you're defining your process from scratch, you're wasting time. this is an issue. This is a process that has been developed over and over and over again. No matter what systems you're using, just overlay a template. You're going to be 95% there within a few days.
Yes.
Now the flip side of that is you got to have everybody buy into the process. So it is a little balance there, in feeling like everybody's contributed to that process definition.
Well, what excites me about this and what I really love about it is I'm a big believer in marketing, especially the CMO role as being a strategist. You're moving beyond just reporting, right? Reporting what has happened, reporting activity, and you're really moving into influence. And I think this is kind of what separates CMOs from just being functional leaders, right? You're moving into strategy. You're now positioning marketing as a lever in the organization that is really responsible for moving the revenue number, as opposed to just the brand awareness and activity exercises that I think a lot of CMOs get stuck wearing. But it's something that we all know, especially in tough economies, are things that can quickly be cut out.
Yeah. And I love your use of the term lever because, there is reporting on what has happened, right? Which when you look at sales analytics tools and marketing analytics tools, that's what you're going to find.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to find to show me what's happened, right? You can see trends, right? Is this metric going up or down? The question is, what is the number supposed to be?
Mm.
And because we don't have that design of the revenue process, we don't know whether up is good enough, whether we care about that thing going up. It might be way more important for a different lever to go up.
Yes.
Right. And so when you look at the design, then you can move the levers and run scenarios. Right. It's okay. How am I gonna hit the bookings target for this particular revenue stream? Is it more important for me to focus on my stage conversion rate in stage 3? Or is it more important for me to give some money to marketing and get some more leads in? What is the most efficient way for me to produce the bookings I'm being asked to produce? And so it is absolutely moving beyond reporting, and it's moving into the design of the revenue function. And we were just talking about alignment with marketing and sales. Well, that's where the alignment happens.
Yes.
Right? It's not marketing's producing something and sales is producing something. We're producing something together. And that's when we design that whole process together. Everybody knows exactly what they need to contribute at every step. And if they don't, it's going to affect the ultimate success of the organization.
Well, just like that article that I referenced at the top of our discussion in Adweek, which I will link in the show notes, tying marketing activities back to revenue is clearly something that is becoming increasingly important, especially in tough economic conditions. And so, as we kind of wrap up our conversation here today, if you had to leave listeners with 2 or 3 takeaways on how they could start to better align marketing teams to revenue, what would they be?
Well, I think the most important thing is you have to connect marketing activities, sales pipeline. Otherwise, you'll never be able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So there is some system support that needs to be there in order for us to have a basis for this language to begin with. So that's important. There has to be that connection between marketing activity and sales productivity. The next is, as I was just mentioning, design this function together,
Mm-hmm.
right? It is, because it's so typical we get the finger pointing, right? You're not giving me enough leads. You're not following up on my leads. And that has to go away. That is completely unproductive time wasted. What we need to do is, I'm giving you these, what happened to them? What happened to this cohort? Were they effective? Were they good for sales? Did sales progress them? Did they close? Okay, well, what about this other cohort? Well, if there's another cohort that is performing better from a pipeline and bookings contribution perspective, let's shift our marketing spend, because marketing has to close deals. Otherwise, let's all go home. So there is this alignment. And I think, rethinking the way we show up in the leadership meeting, right? I mean, like, don't bring in followers and leads and clicks. I will tell you that, I've heard so many times other executives in that situation, and they say, we don't run payroll based on followers. Right. And so that is I'm not discounting how important those things are. I'm just saying that that's not what your executive peers will value. It's not what your executive peers will understand. Right. And so, always come in to the meetings with something that is related to revenue, to bookings, to efficiency, to contribution, to sales velocity. Those are the things and then that's where the discussion becomes productive.
I'm chuckling, Dana, because I've been in these meetings and I've presented a wide range of marketing statistics, and you are 100% correct. With sales leadership especially, they don't care about a lot of those metrics. All they care about is, what leads have you delivered to me today, right? How is this affecting my pipeline? How many of the leads that you've generated are actually closing new business? I've been at that table. I've seen the expressions on their face, and you're 100% right. And, I've really appreciated our conversation today because it's a reminder of how the CMO role really is evolving. But before we wrap up today, if listeners want to learn more about RevOps, what you're working on, about what IQ can provide, where should they go? How could they best get in touch with you and learn more about what you're doing?
Sure. Yeah. Just go to the website, aye-q.com. And that explains what we're doing. It explains how we are approaching this problem with speed and efficiency, right? So, don't like throw up your hands and say, we don't have the resources to build this. I don't have the expertise. The reality is most B2B companies don't. And so that's why we've done this in an automated fashion. So it's economical, it's fast, and it's validated, right? We've got a lot of really smart people that have done this over and over. And so we love to help, especially companies that are under pressure for growth and efficiency. That's really where we shine.
That's terrific. And I'd also love for you to plug your podcast, because you're a podcaster as well and have a great show. Tell listeners where they can hear that.
Sure. It's called IQ Answers. Our focus on our podcast is around all of these different levers. It's all around B2B growth. So marketing is a huge piece, of course, sales, strategy, customer success, the whole cycle. You can find us on Apple or Spotify.
That's great, Dana. I'll also have all that linked up in the show notes. Thank you so much for spending the time with us today. I've really enjoyed this discussion.
Likewise, Eric. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Virtual CMO Podcast. For more episodes, go to 5echelon.com/podcast to subscribe through your podcast player of choice. And if you'd like to develop consistent lead flow and a highly effective marketing strategy, visit 5echelon.com to learn more about our virtual CMO consulting services.